clarifying the intention of the call. So this is something that's been on my mind this week. This is something that's come in conversation many, many times. Christy and I, you and I were talking about this, and since that, probably might have had maybe 4 to 6 conversations, even more, sharing with people. And it's really been resonating with people throughout the week. And so it's this idea of when we're purpose driven, we're naturally bringing in passion, purpose, prosperity in everything that we do. It's interwoven. And what I realized for myself is that it can be hard to, it can just be a little bit confusing sometimes. It's like they can all get mixed together. And for example, like when I was focused on my SEO business, like that was clearly for making money. Like that's it. Like obviously we're going to provide a good service and stuff, and I was excited about it because of the life that it could provide me and the systems. But it wasn't like I was necessarily like grown up as a child being like, oh, I just naturally want to create an SEO business. And so that's what it was revealed to me was that when when I was in a business that wasn't connected to my passion, my purpose as deeply, it was very easy to see like, okay, like I'm going to be getting on calls with people who want SEOs because that's to generate cash. It was cash calls. All right. But when it comes to like our passion and purpose, what I realized is three things started mixing together. It's like cash calls, it's there to generate for the business. Social calls, like-minded people, aligned people, same values, same similar visions, and then giving calls. It was charity contribution, or sometimes you just, I'd hop on a call and just give and share. And what I noticed is it was always interweaving, and it was so helpful for me to just have the clarity of like, okay, with this call, what is my number one intention? Like all these things are going to, come through, I'm sure, but what's the number one priority for this call so that I'm clear. And as I'm clear, I can communicate that to the other person. And, there's one person I was even hopping on the call and, I just shared with him and he loved it. It's like, okay, this is a generation call. So it's like, we're going to see if we can do business together. And of course, we want it to be a win-win-win. I have this card here from Yannick. Of course, we're looking for a win-win-win. And my belief is that, I only collect cash by delivering value and support, and I aim to deliver 10x the value to charge. So it's like all of that is staying constant, and it's like, okay, is the intention of this to generate cash for the business to create a win-win-win, or is it not? Is the number one priority in this call to say social? Hang out, connect, and obviously there's going to be value flowing each and every way. But what's the priority for this call at this time? And especially with passion, purpose, prosperity, I feel like, with the people around us, we can intermingle with these absolutely through different, it's not just like one person fits in one category. It's like we intermingle. So it's just us being clear of like, all right, focus for this call. What's the intention for this call? An example. And then of course, like giving call. Like, all right, I'm just going to be, giving, whether it's a charity or, a session or gifting a session. So it's just being very clear on that. So yeah, Christy, in our conversation, you shared that with your work in the health field, you guys have your social time, and you also have cases that you work on when it's a procedure on somebody's heart. So as you were sharing with me that you guys can be chatting, but if it's time to do a case, it's like that's the number one priority. Like that's what you're here to do is to do a job and do it well and provide that service and that support. And so that was very powerful for me to just be like have that context as a business owner of like, okay, like my version of my cases are doing the cash calls that generate for the business. And to make sure that those priorities in my day and my week are handled first, and then I have time for the the social and the giving. And of course, really make sure that, yeah. So I would just say wrapping this up, or not even wrapping this up, is connecting is what resonates with you from this message in particular, and I'll give you a couple prompts and feel free to choose which one resonates with you the most, is with your priorities. So with your work or your career or your business, is the cash calls being handled priority-wise? Because that's what will move the business forward, creating those win-win-wins. Or is the cash calls being pushed to the back burner, maybe to the next day or the next week or whichever. So let me know in the chat of how that resonates with you, how that connects with you. And as you do that, I felt a new sense of freedom with this because, yeah, it's just clarity. And I was sharing this with a friend who's a wealth advisor, and it was making a lot of sense for her too because she was going on a trip with her family, and she realized as I was sharing this that, and they're doing like a road trip all across the U.S. So it's like, they're traveling a lot, and she realized as she was saying this, she's like, yeah, I've had a cash call, each day that could potentially generate business, and it's felt great because it's like, all right, it's one thing that's being done to move the business forward each day. And even if I do nothing else, like I know at least like the essentials are being taken care of. And so I feel like that gives us a level of freedom when we know the key things are being done, and we can relax a bit more and enjoy the times that we do have, whether it's the social times or the giving times or whichever it is. So if there's any last thing that resonates with you on this, go ahead and share me in the chat. And what we'll do today is do some clearing on any resistance to this. Any resistance to this. I know for me, I haven't had resistance like calling it like a cash call. But then I'm just like, just being honest with myself. It's like, all right, what is the intention? Is it to generate for the business or not? Because I feel like I have and have had a fear of just not wanting to treat people like dollars, and I think that, I probably, experiences of just being in the traditional business world where that can be like that pretty quickly, of just treating people like numbers, and, even internet marketing campaigns where people become clicks and clicks become, conversions, and it's just like so cold and heartless. So that's been my resistance and fear of it, and I'm understanding that's like baggage that's blocked the clarity, and ultimately that's blocked, a level of honesty, like with myself and the other person. Because if another person is like, all right, we're doing a social call, like I feel like that's the best service to them. If that other person knows that, all right, this is a cash call, we're looking to see if we can do business together, I feel like that's just very clear. So any resistance that comes up, any fears that come up of, oh, maybe that conversation can't be just had, just a cash call, two people wanting to do business together and exploring. Maybe it has to be a whole song and dance of like interweaving like, social or this, and at the very end it's like, oh, maybe we can do business together. All these things can come up instead of just being very clear. And I feel like too, with online services that are connected to our passion, I feel like it's a little bit harder to do this than in a regular, say, traditional brick and mortar business. Because like back in the day, not even back in the day, but if you just think of like a traditional business, it's like, all right, people go there and you're making like cupcakes or you're making like bakery goods. It's just like very clear, like that's your product, and that you either come and you buy it or you don't. There's none of this kind of like mixing of maybe giving your expertise. I guess I really see this in the like coaching expertise business, because it's not as clear. Like you can share something with a friend, but what's the boundary with that? Is that part of the paid expertise or not paid? And when does that come in? Whereas like a loaf of bread is like a loaf of bread. You eat it, you ate it. So let's see, I'm just looking at the comments here. Yeah, Christy shared that for your cash calls, haven't been putting that in your priority, have not been moving the business forward. Yeah, so I feel like this is a great opportunity to be like, all right, out of all the things that we could do and all the things that this online, that online, it's like, all right, what are my cash calls for the week? It's probably less than 3. Maybe it's 1, 2, or 3, and just being like, all right, let me knock that out first, and then explore the other things. So before we hop into here, fear of being clear with our intentions, fear of that clarity not being enough for business to be generated. It's almost like maybe fear of like, oh, like if they see me and my intentions and my product, it's not going to be good enough. So maybe I have to wrap it up with all this other smoke and mirrors. Um, or maybe it'll offend them. Oh my goodness, like so many things that come up. What if I'll be a bad person for presenting my product? It's like these things just like come up, and I smile because I think of myself on the other side, and it's so silly to me, because I'm like, all right, if an accountant came to me and they're like, all right, I have accountant services. Do you want to talk about them? It's just like, oh, okay, like that's very clear, Yeah, or yeah, because people need to make a living. So anything that makes any resistance around this, we'll go ahead and clear specifically for this. And then also get into clearing like the giving call too, because I guess we're going really deep on this because it was for me. I felt like I was giving, and part of this, I was like, man, I feel like I'm giving so much. And then once I had this realization, I looked at my calendar, and I was like, I am definitely doing the giving calls, but a lot of them are social calls that aren't going anywhere business wise. They're like connection calls, people, which was aligned, great people, fun to talk to, but it wasn't really going. And it was like shared purpose driven people, but it just wasn't business wise getting anywhere. So I was running myself a bit thin, feeling like I was giving, but it wasn't even giving. I was like, oh man, like I feel like the business would be way farther ahead if all those calls going nowhere were just purely, say charity calls or whatever, because that all that energy out would come back in. So I recently uh, cleared my schedule of anything that isn't, and I did it in a kind way. I canceled meetings, yeah, and I did it in a kind way, and I had people thanking me for it because I was like really clear with my intention. I shared and I said that we recently sub-niched down from helping teams work in flow state to helping purpose-driven agency owners. So right now we're really focused on that. So if there's relationships that are aligned with that, then great. And if not, um, we want to be upfront with people so it saves us both time. So that was something that was very impactful for me because I got a bunch of time back, and then I got space to actually do more of the giving, with the charity organizations, different things, and of course taking care of the cash calls.